We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace. Welcome. I am the Reverend Ron Phares, and this is North Shore Unitarian Congregation's Sunday service. The most difficult reflection that I have ever delivered was the one in which I told my Tucson congregation that I was leaving. There was a song, it actually goes back to the late 90s or maybe early aughts, I can't remember exactly when. It was a song called Let Go. Not to be confused with Let It Go. It was Let Go by a band or woman, I'm not sure which, called Frou Frou. And its chorus concluded with, "There's beauty in the breakdown." I've often thought about that lyric, and that was the inspiration for today's reflection, a topic I scheduled months ago. But in the intervening days, reality has overtaken that conjecture. And the breakdown is here. The question is, will it reveal beauty in the end, in itself? Noticing beauty in the midst of tribulation is important. Cultivating, turning to, praying to beauty, deep and lustrous beauty, not only witnessing it, but feeling it, invests us profoundly in the world and establishes our stake in things, events, and relationships. It also shifts our consciousness from despair to the deepest experience that we are able to have. And in that shift, it offers salvation regardless of the prospects of repair. Beauty stops us. And in that arrest, it buys us space. That space may be the primary requirement to finally find our way out of the breakdown. But also, it's true that finding a way out might be secondary to the experience and feeling of beauty itself. I've organized an interfaith group of clergy exploring how we might contribute to the work of Extinction Rebellion. For our upcoming session, we assigned ourselves the task of finding stories and wisdom from our various traditions that uncover beauty in the midst of despair, joy in the midst of heartbreak, life in death. But I'm sort of at a loss. Luckily, I'm not the only person here. I'm thinking that this may be a good time to turn to our SSA, our Service Associate for the day, Cynthia Becker. Cynthia, I've asked her if she could please reflect for a moment on where she has found beauty in the breakdown.
Good morning, Ron. And to everyone else watching us on YouTube, it's very empty here, and I'm still not getting used to coming in on Sunday mornings, and it's just the two of us. Before moving into what beauty has been in the breakdown for me, here's some telling quotes on beauty for me. Beauty is not caused, it is, from Emily Dickinson. Everything has beauty, but not everyone sees it, from Confucius. Beauty can be consoling, disturbing, sacred, profane. It can be exhilarating, appealing, inspiring, chilling. It can affect us in unlimited variety of ways, yet it is never viewed with indifference. Beauty demands to be noticed. It speaks to us directly with the voice of an intimate friend. If there are people who are indifferent to beauty, it is surely because they do not perceive it. Philosopher Roger Scruton. Beauty in general to me are those moments that make your heart stop due to the sheer amazement of what is or what has unfolded unexpectedly. I perceive it often in times of repose, but usually didn't happen that often in pre-pandemic hustle and bustle of too long work commutes, in-person meetings, endless family and social obligations, often overlapping and even double booked. That time of being so busy, often thinking, what can I postpone so I can just have a little downtime? We would rush through overly scheduled days and evenings, falling exhausted to sleep and getting up ready to start over on the next day. Do you remember? I didn't realize that level of exhaustion and only living for what I should be doing, what was doing to me. So during this wild, strange, and never-ending siege of COVID, we have had the time to collect those small, intimate, precious moments that became an unlikely collage that has helped us feel more alive in a new way. This year in reflection has been a time of great beauty, I believe. Empty roads devoid of traffic where one saw small creatures not regularly seen scurrying across the carless paths, literally watching our hair grow. Interesting for most of us. Rediscovering books we have have meant to read as we feasted upon them with all the free time that seemed endless. The 7 o'clock cacophony of sound from people's hearts, sending loud thanks to our essential workers. Getting lost in the trove of interesting stories with well-written and complex characters on the plethora of streaming choices. There was no boundary to our binging sometimes. Taking the time to prepare whole meals that we could actually sit down at a table and enjoy with no time restriction for eating. We won't go into the snacking increase though. Growing closer with friends via regular video face-to-face connections with far-flung people weekly that I normally would email maybe a few times a year. But most of all for me was the ability to just be still and be in the beauty of the moment, often. Could be many of these moments in an hour, a day, as compared to pre-pandemic times, where those kind of moments needed to be planned in. During this past year, I was able to sit and look out the window for an undetermined time with no guilt of what I should be doing, as happily shoulds fell away slowly into wants. Not quite there yet, but I want to continue to give myself permission to continue in my new normal when this war has abated. I love this Brené Brown quote on the new normal, and I seek to embrace it. She said, "We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalized greed, inequality, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, connection or disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return. My friends, we are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all humanity and nature. And I am looking forward to proudly wearing my new stitch coat and stopping often for multiple moments of beauty and not look backwards on the world of so many shoulds." Now please join with me in singing our first online hymn, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are," number 188 in the Gray Hymnal.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of living, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
I've broken my vows 1,000 times.
We've broken your vows 1,000 times. We've broken our vows 1,000 times.
I've broken my vows 1,000 times.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of weaving, ours is the God of holy faith. Come, yes, you come, come, worshiper, lover of weaving, ours is the worshiper, lover of weaving, ours is the God of holy faith. Come, yes, you come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of weaving, ours is the caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, come yet again, come.
So I've spent a lot of time on college campuses as a student, lots of studenting. It seems each college has a resident street corner style preacher of the apocalypse. Basking in the conglomerate glory of misapprehension of source material and free speech, they did their best to seed fear into the hearts of any who would listen. Get right! Turn back from your evil ways. The end is nigh. The end is nigh. I always wondered why there was just one per school. Like maybe there was a sort of gladiatorial competition that weeded out the weaker preachers. Like, did they have turf battles? Who could repent the hardest? At any rate, the end is nigh. When I hear that, I can't help but laugh. I'm like, buddy, you're too late. And too obvious. Too obvious because the end has always been nigh. I mean, life is precarious and finite, so that's not exactly news. But too late. Because if your frame widens to larger than your single life, the end has already come. Consider the apocalypse visited upon West Africans and people indigenous to the Americas by colonialism, or for that matter, by the Welsh, who experienced it at the hands of the Romans. I guess hurt people hurt people. I've read in the book 1491 that between Columbus in Cuba and Miles Standish on Plymouth Rock, this continent, Turtle Island, lost upwards of 80% of its inhabitants to European bacteria. And that was before it was done on purpose, before forcible relocation, before the Indian Act, before residential schools. That's apocalypse. And then according to the BC nature writer, J.B. McKinnon, who wrote the book, The Once and Future World, we live on a 10% planet. That is to say, the Earth is currently home to 1/10 of the natural variety and abundance that once thrived here. Evidently, the Great Fork in the Road was the advent of human impact. Not our intent, I know, but yikes, the impact. But I mean, not all humans, am I right? In any case, we're not living in anticipation of, but in the wake of the apocalypse. We are now on life support. We are post-apocalyptic. I bet you didn't imagine there would be Netflix in the apocalypse, did you? It's weird, I know. But you want to know what dystopia looks like? I mean, are you paying attention? You don't need as much imagination as courage. With its cult of oil, violent struggle, and questionable fashion sense, Mad Max is barely a metaphor. It turns out that apocalypse isn't a moment, it's a trajectory. It's not all doom and gloom. There are some victories, and I believe that we should celebrate those more thoroughly. And I don't believe that we have done that enough these days. The media is more often full of problems and failures. Whether it's in anti-racism, homelessness, ecology, celebrating progress might generate some momentum to celebrate success in the work and give people reason to continue with it. But I won't be doing that this morning. My mouth is too full of the gristle of disappointment and fury. Because I have seen the arc of history, and its curve is a hell of a lot shorter than the one that bends towards justice. I've got firsthand experience with that, and whether you know it or not, so do you. And that makes me mad. Getting mad only makes it worse. So caught between the impotence of aftermath and scale, what do I do? What do we do? I don't know. Not wallow in self-pity, that's one thing. I suppose two stories come to mind, and we'll be talking about the magic and power of stories in an upcoming reflection series. Today, considering our post-apocalyptic predicament, these two particular stories come to mind. One is that parable of the hummingbird, who in the midst of a forest fire, and all the animals running away from the fire, nobody trying to put it out, this little hummingbird goes to the river, gets a hummingbird beak full of water, and flies over to the inferno and deposits the water, and then keeps doing it back and forth. And the animals think that hummingbird is crazy. And they say, "What are you doing?" And the hummingbird says, "I am doing what I can." And then the other story that occurs to me is the one about Nero fiddling while Rome burned. And the hummingbird one is to inspire us to be of use, or at least make us feel useful, if only there were enough hummingbirds. The fiddling one is actually a bit of righteous propaganda used to slag a truly disgusting human being, or rather a human being who behaved in disgusting ways, counter to the inherent worth and dignity bestowed upon him by creation and corrupted in him by a context that centered power and the privilege of his birth above all. It's also made up, right? Nero was not in Rome when it was burning, and the fiddle hadn't been invented yet. He was still a psychopath. But that said, setting aside the cast of the story, I'd like to suggest that it could be understood in a somewhat different way. I mean, what if fiddling while Rome burned isn't callous? I mean, in this case, even the most powerful person on the planet was not capable of arresting the fire once it spread too far. Faced with catastrophe, perhaps there is something more honest, more true, more meaningful, and ultimately more healing in making music rather than spitting on an inferno. Maybe there's more profit in lamentation than reparation. Maybe there's more hope in heartbreak than new paint on a fallen face or a tenement condemned. Maybe there is more health in the heart breaking open to beauty through loss than the mad dash for a fix with only the thinking that got us into the predicament available for us to get out of it. I'd like you to consider that for a moment as we listen to this next piece of music. Ross, can you take us to a song and let these good people contemplate the power of beauty?